battlefield site. I'm at not quite the summit of Little Round Top, the site of an epic portion of the Battle of Gettysburg, fought July 1st to 3rd, 1863, right here in central Pennsylvania, as Robert E. Lee's army in Northern Virginia sought to invade the North for a second time, having failed at the Battle of Antietam in Maryland, just south of here in 1862. He wanted to take the battle to the north to end the conflict and force President Lincoln to sue for peace so the Confederate States of America could continue their existence without a conflict. Didn't go very well. A battle wasn't intended to be fought at Gettysburg. He intended to push on towards Carlisle and up towards the Susquehanna to take Harrisburg. But his troops wound up coming down one of the roads here towards Gettysburg and ran into what we call today a meeting engagement with the Confederate or with the Union cavalry. The Union cavalry had a meeting engagement with them there, and then what happened was that kind of set the stage for the Battle of Gettysburg, as the Confederate regiments, shielded by the ridgeline off of the distance here, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, we're moving up to the west of here towards Carlisle and then on to Harrisburg. But once those forces from, I believe, General Heath's division had engaged, Lee said, this is the place, this is the battle. And that began the Battle of Gettysburg on the 1st of July, 1863. Temperatures well north of 90 degrees Fahrenheit, brutal conditions, soldiers wearing woolen uniforms, many marching in tattered clothing and shoes or lack of shoes or boots. And you can just imagine what was going on here. I'm going to give you a reverse view here now of the battlefield. Just a moment. Let me turn this around. There you go. From here, not quite at the summit of Little Round Top, you can see down there in the distance, I'll point to it just over here, is the Devil's Den. Devil's Den was a site of brutal hand-to-hand fighting with General Hood's division from Texas fighting against Union troops who were positioned down there. And then the Confederate forces tried to come around Little Round Top by going over Big Round Top, which is often the distance over here to the left. That's Big Round Top, and they tried to go up that mountain and come up the seam over there, which is where the famous battle with the 20th Maine took place. Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain fought against a Texas and an Alabama regiment on the extreme left of the Union line. But from here, you could see down below Devil's Den, brutal fighting took place down there, hand-to-hand combat, and many other battles, pitched battles throughout here. The Gettysburg National Military Monument site, or battle site, is full of monuments. In the distance, you can see many of them commemorating the regiments and the units that fought here for the Union and Confederates. But you can see off in the distance is that ridge line, which I talked about. That screened the movement of the Confederate forces coming up the Army of Northern Virginia as it moved forward, headed towards Carlisle and eventually onto Harrisburg. That was the objective. But the battle was here, not in Harrisburg. As you can see here now, I'm going to take you to the summit of Little Round Top. Talk a little bit more about Round Top before we move on. Lots of monuments out here, as you can see. Imagine this, summertime, 90 degrees, you're melting in a woolen uniform, and some crazy idiot says, we're going to take that hill. Look, guys, I spent 36 and a half years in the Army, multiple combat tours, and no one ever told me to climb up a hill like this in wool. Thank goodness. That would have been crazy. That would have been a nightmare. Imagine the courage, the fear it took to follow those leaders, to take their direction, to come up this hill. That took commitment, fear, or courage, one of those, or all of those combined. What an absolutely amazing situation. So every year people come here throughout the year, but the big turnout, of course, is the 1st to the 3rd of July when people commemorate the battle that took place here 162 years ago. Now, where I'm at is almost the extreme left of the Union flank on Little Round Top. Just a little bit further, about 200 meters to my left, is where Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain's 20th Maine depleted unit was placed by the colonel in charge of him, a 26-year-old full colonel. I didn't make colonel till I was in my 40s. I feel a little embarrassed. It came at 26, but then I didn't fight in the Civil War where people got direct commissions as colonels. But anyway, he was a 26-year-old Strong Vincent in charge of a New York brigade, which the 20th Maine was attached to. He said, don't give an inch. He told his troops who were set up here. Now, just below here, about 100 meters to my left, Strong Vincent, the 26-year-old brigade commander, was mortally wounded during the battle and died 5 days later in the aid station. He didn't know that President Lincoln had brevet promoted him to Brigadier General posthumously. So he's now known as Brigadier General Strong Vincent, not Colonel Strong Vincent. And you can just imagine, folks, what it must have been like to deal with this. I mean, I've had body armor on, Kevlars, pistol belts, ammunition, water canteens, everything you can imagine. And that's quite a bit. That'll weigh you down. But coming up this hill without body armor, without a Kevlar to protect you, bullets bouncing off these rocks, pretty frightening situation. You can only imagine. So I thought I'd give you a look at this. We usually do this every couple of years, the Gettysburg thing. So I came back tonight because some of the audience asked for it. And as I said, I just can't imagine. 36 years in the Army, and I didn't have to climb a hill like this, thank goodness. The good news is we were mechanized. We had tanks and we had vehicles. I can't imagine. But you can imagine, looking off the distance here, that the Confederate forces under Lee marched through this terrain, beautiful Pennsylvania countryside, but a deadly place with massive casualties took place this day. And I'm going to take you a little bit later on to where the 20th Maine plugged one of the key gaps. I've already recorded some footage of what the 20th Maine did, but I'm going to record a little bit of information about the Minnesota Regiment, which also played a key role here, losing nearly all their troops, shoved into battle with an understrength regiment, and plugged a key gap. If you look off in the distance, it's very hard to see, but over here, that tall ivory-looking dome is the Pennsylvania Monument. It's the largest monument here in Pennsylvania, the longest contribution of troops. The most troop contributing state here at the Battle of Gettysburg was naturally Pennsylvania. So many regiments fought here for Pennsylvania, and they have the biggest monument on the battlefield. But just short of that is the monument for the Minnesota Regiment that suffered grievous casualties, about 85% casualties, plugging a gap in the Union lines, which was essential to buy the Union forces time to stop the Confederates from breaking through and penetrating the center of the Union line. In addition to that, well over 100 plus years after the Battle of Gettysburg, Lieutenant Cushing from a New York artillery battery under President Obama's administration was decorated with the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions in stopping when the Pickett's charge took place in the center. His artillery battery put their canister and fired directly at the Confederate troops, devastating them as grape shot and lead flew through and shredded the ranks of those divisions coming forward under Pickett's charge. Pickett wasn't the only division went forward, but he's most famously known for it. That battle, that portion of the battle carries his name into infamy, Pickett's charge. But there were other Confederate units who came through that gap. And it was over 1 mile under artillery fire and then eventually direct fire from rifles that the Confederate forces marched across this field in the distance, which I'm going to show you. In that distance over there, where you can see the brown out there, that's the field over there. They started in a tree line to the west, and an open space came out for 1 mile and went all the way across the battlefield under fire, intense fire, trying to break the center of the Union line. Can you imagine the heroism or the lunacy involved in that? You just can't help but wonder what that must have been like for those people who were farmers, coopers, blacksmiths, merchants, plantation owners, teachers, maybe even dentists. I don't know if we had many dentists back then, but the point is that they had lives, and then they were called to battle by either Confederate States or by the Union, and they fought for what they believed in, right or wrong. Fortunately for these United States, that conflict ended with the Union preserved. President Lincoln's actions, while at times questionable, his suspension of habeas corpus ran flagrant to the U.S. Constitution. His rounding up of people that he thought were a threat and locking them in prison wasn't right. But many of the decisions that President Lincoln took during that war preserved the Union for the country we have today. Without him, we wouldn't be here. Without the brave soldiers who fought here. I have 8 great-great-grandfathers who were in the United States at that time. One was simply too old to fight. He was in his 50s. But the other 7 all fought in the Civil War. 7 of my 8 eligible great-great-grandfathers fought in the Civil War. All of them for Union regiments. And that's ironic since I was born in Maryland, a border state. And many of my family consider themselves part of the South. But all of my ancestors fought in Union regiments. Every one of them volunteered. And one of them was imprisoned at Andersonville, a notorious concentration camp for Union prisoners of war where many died from dysentery and other infectious diseases. But 7 fought, the long heritage, to preserve the Union. But mutual respect on both sides, and that's what Gettysburg is all about, ladies and gentlemen. Mutual respect. At a time when, just 5 years ago, lunatics were going around this country trying to destroy this, ripping down monuments, spray painting the 54th Massachusetts, a color regiment's monument in Massachusetts. Twisted people. People have no loyalty to this nation whatsoever. At a time that was happening, patriots came out here and defended these battle sites to protect the monuments that were placed here. None of the monuments representing any of these regiments were placed here with public financing. Every single monument was raised by people in the states where they were from. Every single battlefield monument here, including that massive Pennsylvania monument. None of this came from taxpayer money. It was all done at the behest of the veterans and their descendants who wanted to mark where they served in the battlefield. And there you have it, folks. So this little update from Gettysburg. I hope that's helpful. I'm getting baked in the sun with my insufficient pigmentation. I'm going to look like a lobster by the time this is over. But it's quite warm here, and unlike the soldiers in the Confederate and Union regiments, I'm not forced to wear wool on a hot July day. Reporting live from Gettysburg National Battle Site. Cheers, folks. Catch you later.